Part 59. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womang. Chapter 581. If you keep being blocked and keep taking action, it will waste a lot of time. That's true, but do you think it's too quiet here? Suliang looked at the surrounding environment in confusion and secretly became vigilant. When things go wrong, there must be monsters. Even if it is in the abyss, it is still very lively along the way. At least there is no shortage of small creatures other than abyssal creatures in the abyss. Of course, they all carry a strong aura of the abyss. But there is no life here at all. This is not normal at all. Unless, if there is any overly powerful being hiding nearby, the little aura leaked unconsciously can scare away those little creatures. It seems that the blocker is here again. Yuji sighed, it's really endless. It's troublesome enough. Really, isn't it because you have obtained the Emperor's certificate? Why do these people not want you to reach the Abyss Council? This is as it should be. Suliang silently prepared for the battle. You didn't notice this in advance, but something is wrong. Really? Ahem, maybe they forgot. Yuji coughed slightly and explained awkwardly. Sighing helplessly, Suliang ignored Yuji and concentrated on exploring possible dangers around him. But the next moment, hiss. Suliang took a breath of air, feeling a little outrageous. No wonder there's no life around. Why are there so many of them? Even Yuji on the side frowned slightly. If there are only a few individuals, no matter how strong the opponent is, Yuji will not feel anything. For her, as long as she is not Ji Hongchen's former shadow, or even Wan Qing's level, she can kill him instantly with a wave of her hand. But even she found this kind of situation a bit troublesome. Even if she were to take action on her own, it would still take a lot of time to solve these problems. I think we can get around it. After a moment of silence, Suliang said. Wasting time here is obviously irrational behavior, but they have other purposes to complete. It's too late. Yuji said helplessly. Next moment. Deep in the woods on both sides, there were sounds of armor scraping together. Not long after, what appeared in front of Suliang and Yuji were densely packed and countless abyss creatures. There is no way to deal with this quantity. Did these kings of the abyss go too far? In order to stop them, they actually sent out so many people? Are you afraid that you will send out all the combat power from the next area? Certainly. Suliang also knew that even if those abyss kings valued him, they would never be able to send the power of a region to deal with him. But the number of abyssal creatures in front of him was so exaggerated that Suliang felt a little numb. After just one glance, Suliang knew that the number of abyssal creatures that appeared here was not much less than the number that appeared during the 3-day battle when the foreign passage was first opened. Not just quantity. Even their strength is almost the same. There are many abyss creatures in Transcendence Realm and Immortality Realm. This is no longer something Suliang can deal with by relying on his own strength. What to do? Suliang frowned and asked Yuji beside him. Although it is just a guess, in the abyss, the only ones who can dispatch such a large-scale combat power are the few kings of the abyss. Facing an existence of the same level as Yuji, once Yuji takes action, it will mean a complete hostility and break between her and other abyss kings. Even Yuji would find it difficult to face so many abyss kings. Unless you become the master of the abyss, you will be helpless. This is no longer determined by pure personal strength. It seems that they are really determined to deal with you. With so many people dispatched, aren't you afraid that they will all be left here and never go back? Even if you want to deal with so many people by yourself, it would be a bit troublesome. Suliang spread his hands, not surprised by this. At most they just returned without success. Anyway, we can't kill them all here. If we really take action, it will delay the time to go to the Abyss Council, which is exactly what they want. No matter how you look at it, this is a sure profit operation. That's right. Yuji nodded. The most important thing for us now is to think about how to get through here. Suliang sighed, if we are left here, we will suffer no matter what. How about you just take me away? Heh, I can be considered the king of the abyss after all. How can I be chased around by abyssal creatures that haven't even reached the fountain of life? Yuji immediately rejected Suliang's suggestion. I also want to save face. If I really run away, others will definitely laugh at me, which will be very detrimental to what we are going to do next. Looking at Yuji suspiciously, Suliang nodded helplessly. Okay, let's assume you are right. Isn't it even possible to leave directly or make a strategic retreat? This is really troublesome. With the strength of himself and Yuji, even if they really win, there will be no benefit at all. What to do now? After thinking carefully, Suliang felt a little headache. But at this moment, Yuji put her hands on her hips and said proudly, "Don't worry, I have a solution." Real? Suliang looked at Yuji curiously. Do you have any powerful tricks that can kill them all in one move? Even if you have such a powerful thing, you can't use it at will. Yuji looked at Suliang speechlessly. Is that so? Suliang nodded thoughtfully and learned some new knowledge, which was very good. Sigh. Yuji took Suliang's hand and walked forward. Let's go, don't worry, no one can stop us. But Suliang was still a little hesitant. As they moved, the surrounding abyssal creatures gradually surrounded them with murderous intent. If Yuji didn't take action, Suliang really couldn't think of any other way to let them pass. And just when those abyssal creatures were about to approach Yuji and Suliang, in the outermost area not far away, bursts of neat footsteps suddenly sounded. Suliang looked up and saw that in addition to the abyssal creatures that surrounded them, there were also new abyssal creatures surrounding them. Arrive. There was a smile on Yuji's lips. Now, no one can stop us. What's the meaning? Could it be that those who just appeared are all Yuji's people? Suliang suddenly thought of a possibility. But it's not easy for even Yuji to bring his subordinates across multiple domains, right? Just when Suliang was thinking, with the appearance of those abyssal creatures, those surrounding Suliang and Yuji were all panicked. Immediately afterwards, there was a burst of fighting sounds. In front of Yuji and Suliang, a passage was quickly torn open. Countless abyssal creatures were riding on war horses, with blood dripping from the weapons in their hands. Supply to Her Royal Highness the Queen. The leader got off his horse and knelt before Yuji. Get up. Yuji waved her hand casually. Stop them and don't let them follow. If they persist in their obsession, they will be killed without mercy. Yes. The kneeling man nodded in agreement, got on his horse, and led a group of subordinates to guard Yuji and Suliang to protect them. This time, as expected, none of those who came to stop Suliang and Yuji took any action. How did you do that? Suliang asked with some surprise. Crossing such a long distance and bringing so many soldiers, is Yuji's operation too outrageous? The other kings are focusing on the border and the battles in this world, so naturally they will not notice the transfer of some of my men. Yuji smiled and explained, before coming here, I had already expected this scene, so I asked them to set off in advance. As expected of the Queen of the Abyss, she is truly amazing. Suliang praised sincerely, feeling that this wave was Yuji's dimension-reducing blow to other Abyss kings. Not only is there a gap in strength, but the gap in IQ is also not small. How can we fight? All the way to the outside of the siege. Yuji turned her head and said to her men, after you finish things here, go to the Abyss Council. I will wait for you there. Yes. Everyone responded in unison, turned away, and were wary of the enemies in front of them. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Wo Meng. Chapter 582. On the other side, the Queen of the Abyss took Suliang and left directly. There are many obstacles along the way. Assassination, trap, borrowed knife to kill. In order to stop Suliang and Yuji, the people behind the scenes tried their best. But still no results. Along the way, relying on Yuji's strength and power, the two of them arrived at the Abyss Council safely. Being protected by Yuji, Suliang still can't escape the path of eating soft food. At the same time, not long after Suliang and Yuji came to the Abyss Council, a meeting begins here. On top of the meeting, all the kings gathered together, and the aura of the Abyss was extremely strong. That powerful aura fluctuation makes it difficult to breathe. Council of the Abyss. A large round table was placed in the center, and 9 large chairs were placed around the round table. Now, the kings took turns to walk in, sit in their own seats, solemn, waiting for the start of the meeting. Volume 1 Chapter 518 A complicated situation. The most conspicuous among them is the seriously injured Tianzai king. The time before being defeated by Suliang was still too short. Even the king of the Abyss could not fully recover himself. Therefore, at this moment, the Tianzai king's face was pale, and his chest was penetrated by 2 wounds. He was wrapped in a thick bandage, and there was still blood oozing out. Facing the auras released by the other kings without concealment, the Tianzai king looked a little pale, and even withstanding it was a little difficult. You were so seriously injured, what happened? There was a king who looked at Tianzai king, his voice was flat, and it was impossible to tell whether he was concerned or mocking. Snort. The evil king snorted coldly and did not answer. He was easily defeated by an unknown person who was only in the realm of life spring. As the king of the Abyss, he really couldn't say this. Seeing that King Tianzai looked ugly, the other kings said nothing more. After all, the restart of the Abyss Council is not to attack the evil king. Judging from the strength of the heavenly evil king, it was simply not worth their response. In a sense, the evil king is a natural ally for some of them. For allies, there is no need to attack them too hard and offend them to the end. There was silence for a moment. Someone asked, speaking of which, why hasn't Yuji arrived yet? Haha, Yuji's strength is among the best among us. It's normal to have some arrogance. The other person chuckled, and seemed to be speaking for Yuji, but in fact, the ridicule and provocation in his words was undisguised. We unimportant people, just wait. As soon as these words came out, although several other kings understood the provocative nature of these words, they still couldn't help but look ugly. Yuji is just one person. Even if she is stronger, can she still push through the abyss? He is so arrogant that he is even late for meetings of the Abyss Council, which is a huge loss. Whether it is asking Yuji to give up her position on the border or regarding the evidence of the Emperor, Yuji needs to be present. Just when everyone was discussing endlessly, the door of the conference hall was opened, and Yuji finally appeared here with Suliang. You've already sped up, are you still a step slower? Looking at the situation where all the kings gathered in front of him, Suliang said helplessly. After many obstacles along the way, both Suliang and Yuji sped up, and even in the end, it was Yuji who took Suliang flying. But even so, it was still a little late. It doesn't matter if it's a little later. As long as we're not there, even if we give them 2 days, they won't be able to discuss the reason. Yuji was very calm. After all, the protagonists of this meeting are us. Once we get here, everything is set. Then why are we in such a hurry? Suliang said helplessly. Solve it sooner and I can leave with you sooner. Yuji smiled and said it very naturally. Sure enough, you still can't overestimate Yuji. Where did her teasing personality come from? But many times, Yuji is actually surprisingly reliable. At least, if it weren't for her, Suliang wouldn't have been able to get here in such a short period of time. Seeing that Suliang and Yuji were late, they were still chatting and joking as if no one was around. The evil king finally couldn't bear it anymore, slammed the table, stood up and angrily shouted, "Yuji, this is the Abyss Council, not your own territory, don't be too presumptuous. Hear this." Before Yuji could say anything, Suliang took a step forward and said, "Why, did you forget the pain before the wound healed?" As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes changed slightly when they looked at Suliang. Sure enough, is this young man the one who injured the heavenly evil king? That is to say, this young man is actually the holder of the Emperor's certificate, Suliang? Being able to defeat the evil king, the strength of this young man should not be underestimated. Humph, don't think that if you defeat me, you can become arrogant. The evil king said angrily, "This is the Abyss Council, and everyone here is the king of the Abyss. How can you, a mere unknown person, have the right to be so arrogant here? It was me, a nobody, who defeated you." Suliang Jun responded concisely. "If I am a nobody, then what does it matter to you who lost to a nobody?" As soon as these words came out, the anger of the evil king became even more obvious. Seeing it, he already wanted to draw his sword and take action. Enough. A king gave a soft drink and turned to look at Suliang, his eyes dangerous. "This is the Abyss Council, and those who can participate are the kings of the Abyss. Yuji can come, but you can't, get out." "Why, now, are you still thinking of ways to prevent us from participating in this meeting?" Yuji crossed her arms with an inexplicably dangerous smile on her face. "On the way Liang and I came here, countless people stopped us. Who is behind them? Don't let me tear you apart. Say it here. Out." As soon as these words came out, the expressions of many people present changed. But the person who spoke before still refused to give in and continued to insist, "Anyone who is not a king, get out. Tell the heir of the emperor to get out, you are not qualified yet." Yuji responded on the spot, "Liang has the certificate of the emperor and is the legitimate heir to the emperor. Compared with you, the so-called king, his cultivation, strength, and status are exactly the same. Why do you let him go?" After hearing this, the king who spoke immediately darkened his face. Being scolded like this, even if the other party is Yuji, he will feel a little resentful and dissatisfied. But if you can't win again and again, what else can you do? Okay, let's calm down. We finally got together, so why is the relationship so tense?" Someone suddenly stood up and persuaded with a smile. Immediately, he looked at Suliang again and saluted, "The distinguished heir to the emperor should indeed take a seat in the Abyss Council." "Thank you." Suliang nodded in thanks, but his expression was a little strange. "Unexpectedly, among the kings of the Abyss, there are still people who support me? No. It's not that he's supporting himself. Seeing how he doesn't offend both sides, he's obviously playing both ways. Is that a neutral person? Only." In front of the emperor's certificate, Suliang found it hard to trust everyone present except Yuji. Right or neutral, for Suliang, there was no difference. Soon, a guard brought a chair and placed it next to Yuji's position, which was regarded as Suliang's position. Then, in the Abyss Council, Suliang finally stood firm. But the moment he sat down, someone suddenly questioned, "Are you a human being?" Volume 1 Chapter 519, overwhelming the whole audience. Who has any opinions? As soon as the questioning words came out, everyone present fell silent. The person who got the certificate of the Abyss Emperor is actually a human being. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womang. Chapter 583. This kind of doubt is simply a killer. If this news is confirmed, let alone the heir to the emperor, Suliang may not even be able to get out of this room. How could the Emperor of the Abyss let a human do it? This is simply a disgrace, a shame, and a great disgrace. You don't need to think about it to know that you will definitely be rejected and attacked by the entire Abyss. And it's not just Suliang. Even Yuji had to be implicated and ostracized by the entire Abyss. What about the Queen of the Abyss? So what if the strength is transcendent? To actually associate with a human being, and even want to push a human being to become the Emperor of the Abyss, this is a betrayal of the Abyss. Such a person is not even worthy of staying in the Abyss, so how can she continue to be the King of the Abyss? No wonder, I was still wondering before. There is a strong boy like you in the Abyss, who can defeat even the king. How could I not know about it? The evil king immediately picked up the conversation and smiled coldly. It turns out that you are from the human world, this makes sense. A strong man from the human world. I have not been in contact with the real world for a long time, so of course I don't know. The words just fell. Someone immediately picked up and angrily shouted, "You're just a human being, you just sneak into my abyss, but you dare to covet my position as the Emperor of the Abyss, who gives you such courage? You and I will work together to capture this person and find out who is behind the scenes." If a mere human being can enter the Abyss and obtain the Emperor's certificate, there must be someone behind him to support him. As he spoke, the man looked at Yuji. "I think you won't refuse, right?" The relationship between Yuji and Suliang has been clearly shown, but this person still asks questions knowingly. Obviously, he was forcing Yuji to give in and let Yuji stop caring about Suliang. In this case, they could directly capture Suliang and get the Emperor's certificate in their hands. With Yuji here, it would be really difficult for them to capture Suliang. They are no match for Yuji. Even if they go together, they may not be able to defeat Yuji. As for Suliang's identity? What about humans, what about the Abyss? The Emperor's certificate is their goal, and the so-called identity is just an excuse. Why are you arguing again? The king, who had opened his mouth to mediate before, actually stood up again at this moment, with a faint smile, looking like a peacemaker. "Everyone, please calm down. We are all kings of the Abyss, so we must have enough energy. As for your doubts about this young man, do you have any evidence?" Evidence? The person who questioned him before sneered, "I have some experience in knowing people. It seems that this young man has some aura of the Abyss, but these auras are condensed on the outside and just spread out faintly. They are not intrinsic at all. He must have used some method to cover up his own human aura." That makes sense. The neutral king nodded and looked at Suliang. "Young man, if you are really a person from the Abyss, how about you let me test it? Don't worry, if you are innocent, I can protect you even if the king is in trouble." Is this the same thing about neutrality and reconciliation again? Suliang shook his head and looked at the person who questioned him. The question of identity is just for the sake of proving the Emperor's identity. Why bother to cover it up with such hypocrisy? It's a joke. Furious, the man immediately became angry and started clapping the case. His majestic and fierce aura enveloped Suliang, as if he wanted to make Suliang surrender based on his aura alone. If it is a normal situation, if the realm is one level different, using breath pressure will indeed have a good effect. But Suliang could even defeat the king of heavenly evil, so how could he be afraid of the oppressive power of an Abyss king? Not to mention, by his side, there is Yuji. Boom! A roaring sound sounded, and before the aura of the Abyss king could reach Suliang, it was directly blocked by Yuji. Not only that, the vast and majestic aura belonging to Yuji was immediately suppressed, and layer upon layer was superimposed on the king of the Abyss. Just a moment. Puff! The king of the Abyss spat out a mouthful of blood, His face flushed red, but he still resisted the pressure of Yuji's aura and refused to lower his head. This is the pride of the king of the abyss. But at this moment, this pride brought him extremely serious injuries. Noisy. With a wave of his hand, he knocked away the king of the abyss. Yuji looked at them coldly. If you want proof of the king, just say so. Why bother making so many excuses without any reason? Liang is right, you are like this behavior is really shameful. Immediately, gazing across the faces of the abyss kings, Yuji stood with her hands behind her hands, very arrogant. What's more, it doesn't matter if Liang is a human being, so what if he's an abyss? He has the emperor's certificate in his hand and has been recognized. He is naturally the emperor's heir. What does this identity have to do with whether he is a human or an abyss? Yuji, do you have to be stubborn? A king said angrily, it would be fine if he is from the abyss. Although we are not convinced, we do not want to go against you. But now, a human being wants to be the emperor of the abyss. How can anyone believe this? Shut up. Yuji gave another soft drink, and with a flip of her hand, she knocked the man away. Liang is the heir to the emperor recognized by the emperor's certificate, and Guziran also recognizes it. Whether it's you or the entire abyss, if you don't accept it, you can take action and take it on alone. Stop being so pretentious here, it's disgusting. As soon as these words came out, all the abyss kings were shocked. He actually wants to use his own power to fight against the entire abyss? Is this a young man doing it? Is Yuji crazy? What arrogance! But by accident. At this moment, they didn't dare to refute at all. The Yuji in front of them is a being that they cannot defeat even if they work together. Yuji really didn't want to be their enemy, but it was their kings who united with the 8 abyss realms under their command. Without the power of the 8 realms, they are still not looked down upon by Yuji. You are looking for death. The evil king gritted his teeth and couldn't help but say. To this, Yuji just gave him a cold look, and the feeling of contempt was clearly clear in her silence. But at this moment, Liang came to Yuji, patted Yuji on the shoulder, and said with a smile, this is my business. If you let me carry it all, I would be too useless. You mean? Yuji was stunned and looked at Liang blankly, but her beautiful eyes were shining with light. Well, since they are here to question me, let me solve it. Liang smiled, turned around to face the abyss kings, and took out the king's certificate directly. The proof of the emperor is here. Liang clasped his hands behind his back, calmly but majestically, whatever you want, just come and get it. Why is there so much nonsense? Looking at the evidence of the emperor in front of them, the expressions of all the kings of the abyss became serious. After all, this is the emperor's certificate. As long as you get it, you will become the master of the abyss. At that time, the entire abyss will be under your control. Even ordinary abyss creatures, when faced with the emperor's certificate, can't help but feel tempted and want to snatch it away. Not to mention these kings who are already strong enough to stand on the top of the abyss and are only one step away from being the master of the abyss. Everyone, although this boy is only in the life spring realm, his strength is extraordinary. The evil king said in a deep voice, why don't we join forces and grab the emperor's certificate? Kick this outsider out first. At that time, how will the emperor's certificate be distributed? Aren't we the ones who have the final say? This is a very good suggestion from King Tianzai. Some immediately agreed. Even they themselves know that no matter whose hands the emperor's certificate is in the end, if they want to get it in the end, it will take a big battle. Even in the end, it may develop into a war that affects the entire abyss. But so what? Rather than not getting it at all now, it would be better to have a big battle later to decide who belongs. After all, Liang himself is not weak in strength, but behind him, there is Yuji at the peak of his strength. Only if these 8 kings join forces can they have the slightest chance of facing Yuji. Even if Yuji is not defeated now. As long as someone involves Yuji and allows others to take the opportunity to obtain the Emperor's certificate, it is enough. Do you want to join forces to deal with us? Yuji's beautiful eyes narrowed, with a dangerous light flashing in her eyes. You really don't take us seriously. If you want to join us, just come. Gu will let you know what Gu has been relying on to guard the border for so many years. No, we don't have this idea. The seemingly neutral king immediately waved his hand to show weakness. Everyone, why don't we all take a step back? We are all kings, and if we make things like this, even we won't look good, right? How can each of us take a step back? Yuji crossed her arms and looked at him with interest. At this moment, another king said, why don't we take action and you just hand over the Emperor's certificate? No matter what, a human being cannot be the Emperor of the Abyss. Idiot's dream. Yuji sneered, do you really think I'm afraid of you? My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womeng. Chapter 584. If you want to fight, I'll accompany you. Before Yuji could finish speaking, Suliang came to her and stopped her. Showing a confident smile to Yuji, Suliang faced the Abyss Kings and said, how about this, Yuji will not take action from our side. But on your side, only one person can take action at a time. If you each take a step back, you should be satisfied, right? After hearing this, all the Abyss Kings looked at each other, and finally nodded. This result is already the best method that can be achieved at the moment. Although Suliang is indeed very powerful, it is only a life spring after all. With so many kings taking turns, how could they lose to a life spring? As long as Yuji doesn't take action, they still have a chance to win. Seeing the kings nodding, Suliang came to the front of the Abyss Kings and said calmly, who comes first? The words just fell. Then a tall king walked out of the crowd. Boy, just Ming Quan, who gave you the illusion that you can fight against us? The king looked down at Suliang with contempt on his face. Heavenly evil king, oh, being able to defeat him is nothing. Let me show you the terror of the king of the abyss. Say it. The king raised his fist high and punched Suliang. Boom. There was a roar and explosion, and smoke and dust flew everywhere, blocking people's sight. However, when the smoke cleared, something happened that surprised all the kings. I saw. The tall king fell to the ground slowly. There was a wound on his chest, which was a bright sword light. And the other side. Suliang slowly sheathed his sword, his expression still calm. Who else wants to come up and fight me? His calm eyes swept over everyone. Suliang seemed to have just completed a small task, without any sadness or joy. The other side. Seeing this scene, the faces of all the Abyss Kings darkened slightly. This time, it's troublesome. To be able to defeat a king so easily, this young man's strength really exceeded their imagination. No wonder he was able to obtain the Emperor's certificate. And just then, another Abyss King stood up and said, you just defeated one of us. You don't have the qualifications to be arrogant. While talking, the king's figure slowly disappeared, and it seemed that he had used some method to hide his figure. Boy, die miserably. This is what will happen if you underestimate our king. The cold voice echoed throughout the conference hall, and the source could not be found at all. But the next moment, Suliang suddenly turned around and thrust a sword towards his left side. Moment. Blood splashed out, and there, the figure of the previously hidden king was actually revealed. It was discovered so quickly? How can this be? All the kings of the abyss were surprised to know. They are both kings of the abyss, but it is difficult for them to discover the other party's concealment methods. You have to be injured before you can find out one or two clues. Suliang discovered and reacted immediately. It is really difficult and almost impossible to do. This young man's strength may have surpassed theirs. Who else wants to fight with me? The sword pointed at the Abyss Kings, and Suliang said calmly. And this time, no one spoke. Now, Suliang alone exerted pressure on the entire audience, so that none of the kings dared to speak out against it. Since there is no objection, Suliang's identity should be confirmed. Yuji came to the crowd with a cold voice. Suliang holds the emperor's certificate and is the emperor's heir. If anyone has any objections to this, you can come to us to argue. As soon as these words came out, although no one responded, no one dared to object. Then, the matter was thus decided. Volume 1 Chapter 520 The Queen's Tempering. This black stocking is not serious. After leaving the meeting, Yuji immediately hugged Suliang's arm and said with a smile, "You performed well. You relied on your own strength to protect the Emperor's certificate. If you hadn't been watching, they would have attacked me long ago." Suliang smiled and asked, "What should we do next?" "Wait, then." Yuji said helplessly, "Although you have confirmed your identity, you still need to wait for the opening of the ancestral emperor's palace in 10 days to truly become emperor." Nodding slightly, Suliang sighed as he recalled everything just now. The opposition and the neutral faction all have ulterior motives and each has their own agenda. He and Yuji can be said to be fighting alone in the true sense. In the prepared room. Anyway, there are still 10 days left. During these 10 days, we just need to have a good rest. Yuji lay on her side on the bed, looking at Suliang walking around to clean up, and said with a smile, "It's so easy to get over." Suliang sighed helplessly, looking at their appearance. Even if they recognized my identity at that time, they would definitely not be able to do it if they were told not to act at all for 10 days, right? There are 8 eager kings watching from the side. This feeling is really a bit subtle. Suliang was convinced that as long as he had a slight flaw exposed, he would be greeted by blows from those kings. It even includes so-called centrists. Neutrality does not mean that he does not covet the emperor. On the contrary, if they remain neutral, they will be more likely to obtain the emperor's certificate in the end. You have to be vigilant at all times. Even Suliang will feel a little tired. "Now that you've come, let's make peace with it." Yuji didn't care at all. "With me protecting you, what are you afraid of?" The other 8 kings, even if added together, may not be Yuji's opponent. For Yuji, no matter what conspiracy they have, she can destroy it with her absolute strength. "That's what I say, but I can't always let you protect me." Suliang smiled. Although he was worried about this matter, he still acted very relaxed. There are just a few kings of the Abyss. Even if they are afraid of them, they are definitely not to the point where they cannot be dealt with. After fighting all the way until now, Suliang still has this basic confidence. If that's the case, let's take a good rest now. Yuji giggled and waved to Suliang, "Come on, let's rest together." "Well, I think I'd better not rest in your room." Suliang pondered for a moment and said seriously, "What if he rested in the same room as Yuji for 10 whole days?" Suliang really couldn't imagine what would happen. He actually believed that he could withstand it. "But I can't resist at all, what can I do?" However, facing Suliang's tactful rejection, Yuji said with a smile, "No, the 2 of us actually only have one room. Have you only arranged one for us?" "Of course. After all, your appearance is just an accident. Extra people will naturally not get the treatment prepared in advance. Besides, the evil king and the others have been eyeing us. It's convenient for me to protect you if you and I are in the same room." "I really don't know how to refute what you said." Suliang helplessly held his forehead. It seemed that he was destined to be in the same room with Yuji during these 10 days. "Well, after thinking about it, this is indeed much safer, so why do I still feel a little relieved?" After accepting the reality, Suliang sat at the table nearby, poured a cup of tea, and drank it by himself. As long as you keep some distance from Yuji, you will be safe. However, but Yuji just didn't want Suliang to stay away. Lying on his side, his lotus arms support his head. Yuji looked lazy and charming, with a faint smile on her face, staring at Suliang intently. After a while, Yuji suddenly said, "It's decided, in these 10 days, I'm going to hone you." "What grind?" "My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator." Author, Fangzone Womang. Chapter 585. Suliang asked doubtfully. Cultivation. Strength. There is no need for it. I have just broken through and improved, and my cultivation has reached a peak that can be improved in a short period of time. It is no longer necessary or possible to improve. Forcibly improving will only lead to an unstable foundation and serious sequelae. As for the rest, there is no need for Yuji to sharpen her skills at all. Your Xi still needs to be sharpened. Yuji said seriously, raising her beautiful legs wrapped in black stockings. "Come on, help me change my stockings. I think you can do this yourself," Suliang said to Yuji seriously. He was afraid that as soon as he got close, Yuji would pin him down on the bed. "Originally, I didn't need to change it at all." Yuji immediately felt aggrieved, pouting and blinking. The jade feet are small and delicate, smooth and white, and are wrapped in black stone. The extremely thin black silk is looming, and complements the crystal white inside. It is simply the most perfect work of art. If it weren't for serving you, my stockings would still be clean. Yuji's 2 little black stockings were stacked together, making a rustling sound as they rubbed against each other. "What, you are enough for yourself, are you going to abandon others? Can't you be responsible for what you do?" Suliang's face turned dark after listening to Yuji's words. "Do you think I am willing? Didn't you insist on giving me a reward for holding me down? Moreover, I asked you to change it yourself, but you didn't. Who can blame you? Why, after walking all the way, now you feel something is wrong. Do you think I will compromise with you?" "Yes, I am." Suliang sighed. If he insisted on refusing, in the end, he would definitely be forced to do it by Yuji. In this case, it's better to take the initiative yourself. At least, in terms of appearance, it will look much better. He slowly came to sit next to Yuji. Suliang took a new pair of stockings from Yuji and put them aside. Immediately, holding the edge of the stockings with both hands, Suliang slowly used force to remove them. It's extremely smooth, as if there's no resistance at all. Yuji's plump, slender, white, smooth, and soft legs were displayed in front of Suliang. "Can I throw this thing away?" Suliang took the one he had just replaced in his hand and pretended to throw it out. "No, you gave it to others, and they couldn't bear to throw it away." Yuji took it directly from Suliang's hand and put it away seriously. To this, Suliang helplessly spread his hands and said nothing. Volume 1 Chapter 521 The simulation resumes, wearing red clothes and entering the battlefield. You can take whatever belongs to you if you want. What can you do about it? Immediately, pick up the brand new stockings on the side. Suliang picked it up, held Yuji's petite feet in his arms, and slowly pulled it on. Lift it up gently, it's as smooth as before, and you don't feel any resistance at all. Seeing her petite and tender feet and plump white legs covered by stockings, the thin black silk revealed a jade-like whiteness. Soft yet elastic, with the unique smoothness of stockings. It's so hard to let go. And during this whole process, Yuji squinted her eyes, her pretty face was slightly red, and she always looked very lazy. Her enchanting and charming feelings were all on display, making people intoxicated. Don't you think there's any danger at all? Suliang couldn't help but ask. Surrounded by 8 kings with evil intentions, it can be said that at this moment, the 2 of them are enemies of the entire abyss. I don't think so, I'm just used to it, Yuji said calmly. But between this understatement, there are countless years of perseverance and sadness. Yuji is indeed aloof, but this aloofness makes people pity her. On one side is the king of the abyss, who is eyeing the present world and wants to invade it all the time. On the other side, there is this world that is full of hostility to the abyss. Although it has no intention of entering the abyss, it is extremely hostile to the existence of the abyss. As the queen of the abyss, Yuji exists between the two, single-handedly fighting against the 8 realms of the abyss and the 8 kings within them. Every action taken against the present world seems to be full of killings, but in fact, it is to block the provocation and doubts of the other 8 kings, and to protect the present world. But even so, Yuji still received the hostility and hatred of this world. No matter what the reason was, Suliang was full of respect for Yuji for being able to do this. For a king of the abyss to do this in this world, no matter how he looked at it, Suliang should have completely trusted her. It's been really hard on you after all these years. Suliang sighed and actually hugged Yuji. Having struggled to support herself for many years, Yuji's aloofness makes people feel pity for her. With your words, everything is worth it? Yuji smiled happily. Soon, everything will be over. Well, it will be over soon. Suliang nodded and looked at the emperor's certificate in his hand. This time, whether it's for his own ladies, for the present world, or even just for Yuji, Suliang must succeed. Absolutely, cannot fail. The second sim's life can begin. Does the host start the sims immediately? The sound of the system suddenly appeared in Suliang's ears. Take a break. Suliang felt the strength of Yuji holding him and gently patted Yuji on the back. Well, I'm really tired. Yuji nodded and smiled softly. This moment, Suliang saw the purple-haired, weak little loli in the simulation from Yuji in front of him. At this moment, Yuji, who is the queen of the abyss. She was clearly the weak, gentle, and naive girl following the young man. How did the once purple-haired, weak little loli become what she is now? This question has been lingering in Suliang's mind for a long time. This change was really too big. He really couldn't imagine what kind of changes and experiences the weak and gentle girl had gone through, and what kind of huge pressure she had to bear, to become what she is now. Just thinking about it makes people feel distressed. Sigh. Suliang lay down with Yuji in his arms, patted her gently, and watched her slowly fall asleep. Perhaps because of her sudden relaxation, Yuji fell asleep quickly. Even in her sleep, she held Suliang tightly, not wanting him to leave. I won't leave, just have a good rest. After gently patting Yuji's little head, Suliang closed his eyes and said, let's start the simulation. Hopefully, his questions can be answered in the simulation. In Su Mansion. On this day, there are lanterns and colorful decorations, gongs and drums are playing, and it is very lively. Red festive decorations can be seen everywhere, there are many guests, noisy coming and going, and everyone has a happy smile on their face. Congratulations to the head of the Su family, and wish the young master and young mistress a happy marriage for 100 years. Someone offered a gift and congratulated the head of the family who welcomed him. Thank you very much, please come in. The head of the house laughed and welcomed everyone in, obviously very happy. How could you not be happy? Today is the wedding of Suliang, the young master of Su Mansion, and Miss Yuji. The two were childhood sweethearts and had a close relationship since childhood. After they grew up, they decided to make a decision for life. They have been in love till now, and finally got married. And at this moment, as the groom, Suliang has already set off to greet the bride. In the past, Shota, who was calm and collected, has now completely grown into a young man. He is still calm and collected, but he is a little more heroic and handsome. In the sedan chair at the back, the little purple-haired Lolita back then has now become more and more like a fish and a wild goose, and has conquered the country and the city. There is still a little weakness, a little gentleness, and cuteness from time to time, which makes it difficult not to be moved. Congratulations to Master Suliang and Miss Yuji on their wedding. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womang. Chapter 586. On both sides of the road, people congratulated each other from time to time. They were all those who had set up stalls and shops on the street very early and did some small business. They were very familiar with Suliang and Yuji, who wandered the street from time to time. Thank you all. Suliang sat on the horse, returned the gift politely, and said to the guard beside him, after we walk over later, we will be given some gift money. They are all acquaintances and elders, so they are all happy. Yes, don't worry, young master. The guard replied respectfully. It wasn't until the two carriages passed by that the pedestrians on the roadside couldn't help but sigh. I have watched these two children grow up since I was a child. At that time, I felt that these two people must have this day. You see, I was right. All right. Another person heard this and sneered, the young master of the Su family and Miss Yuji are a match made in heaven. They are getting married today. That is what should be done. Do you still need to say this? The other side. The wedding team has returned to the Su family. After going through a series of cumbersome rituals, Suliang brought Yuji to the hall. Now, there were already people sitting in the high hall, waiting for the last ceremony of the two of them. Nervous? Suliang held Yuji's little hand and asked with a smile. Well, a little bit, but mostly happy. There was a little trembling in Yuji's voice, but she couldn't stop her happy feeling. It's great, Ailiang, we are finally married. Yes, we are finally married. From now on, you will be my wife. Suliang couldn't help laughing. Although everything today had been prepared for a long time, when it came, he still felt like a dream. The moment I once dreamed of has actually arrived today. Holding Yuji's hand tightly, Suliang took her one step forward. As long as they go through this last ritual, even death will not be able to separate them. Soon, the worship service was completed, and Yuji, the bride, was taken to the room to wait. Suliang was left to entertain the guests. Time passed quickly, and in a blink of an eye, it was late at night. Suliang wandered to the door of the wedding room, but as soon as the guests behind him disappeared, he returned to normal. On the wedding day, no matter how drunk he was, Suliang was certainly prepared. Push the door open and walk into the room. Looking at Yuji, who was sitting nervously on the bed, clasping her hands tightly, Suliang showed a smile. The long-awaited event has finally arrived today. Picking up the wedding scale on the side, Suliang slowly uncovered Yuji's head. In an instant, it was like seeing a goddess in the sky. Mr. Lang. Yuji blushed and lowered her head. It's late at night. Yeah, it's late at night, it's time to rest. Suliang nodded seriously, pinched Yuji's chin, and kissed her. Immediately, the two of them fell behind each other, unable to control themselves. However, something unexpected happened at this moment. The foreign invasion has arrived at the border, and the situation is already very critical. So much so. This bustling city was shrouded in a layer of gloom. A wedding day should obviously be a joyful day. But Suliang was called over by the senior management of the family. Invasion from a foreign land. Suliang frowned while listening to the conversation between the family head and the elders. From childhood to adulthood, the scenes he saw all appeared in Suliang's mind. Since a long time ago, the shadow of foreign invasion has been hanging over the minds of the world. No matter how prosperous the scene is, it can't erase the heaviness brought by this shadow. Amid the threat of foreign invasion, all prosperity and happiness are like bubbles, which will be burst by the slightest touch. The city's combat power is insufficient and there is no leader. It is really difficult to repel the foreign invasion. An elder sighed, feeling quite a headache, but if we continue like this, once the border city is destroyed, even our family will be reduced to ashes and disappear. This is a life and death crisis, so we have to be cautious. How about mobilizing the immortal cultivators in the city to join the battle? Someone suggested, but even he realized how unreliable this suggestion was. There are not many strong people in the city, and after seeing such an invasion from a foreign land, there are even fewer of them. If it was possible, they would have already used this method, so why would we need to discuss it here? At this moment, someone looked at Suliang, who was meditating aside. What do you think we should do? On the wedding day, it seemed inappropriate to disturb Suliang, the groom. But this is a huge crisis that is related to life and death, and they can no longer care about much. I'll go. Suliang said calmly, I also want to see what kind of existence those people from foreign lands are like. This. For a moment, all the senior family members looked at each other. Today is Suliang's wedding day. Interrupting him at this time and asking him to participate in this discussion is already considered disturbing him. Now, he is asked to take action to repel the invasion of foreign lands. Is this a little too inappropriate? Suliang and Yuji were childhood sweethearts, and they have been in love for many years, and finally waited until today. No matter who it is, they don't want to disturb them at this time. Even if it is one day late, how about letting this special day pass? But the invasion of foreign lands does not wait for anyone. Even if it is delayed for a moment, it may cause irreparable consequences. Let me go. Suliang smiled lightly and stood up directly without waiting for everyone's consent. Yuji will also support me, don't worry. If no one stops the people from the foreign land, even if Yuji and I spend today, what will happen? What we were greeted with was nothing more than an unprecedented catastrophe. After seeing so many tragedies caused by foreign invasions and being protected by others for so long, Suliang didn't feel like he should refuse. Even if today is his wedding day. Then, on this festive day, Suliang left home, put on a red robe, and went to war in command. Beyond the border. Now, countless people from foreign lands have surrounded this place. Our current strength is only enough to support a wave of impact from foreign lands. On the city wall, the guards sighed, if we don't wait for support to arrive, I'm afraid we won't even be able to survive until dawn. We've already called for help. If you hold on a little longer, someone will definitely come to the rescue. The person next to him said firmly. In the face of foreign invasion, even dynasties with feuds can stand firmly together. This is the common enemy of all mankind. In the face of a powerful enemy, internal strife and so on were very rare, and they simply did not believe that it would happen to them. And just then, the foreigner outside the city wall suddenly took action. People from other lands roared towards the city wall like a tide, and like a surging wave, they were already reaching the city gate in just an instant. Foreign attack, everyone, it's time to fight to the death. The guard shouted loudly, and he was the first to rush down the city wall and fight with the people from the foreign land. The foreign invaders are also not weak. Although the city wall is high, it is really difficult to stop them. Instead of waiting for them to hit the city wall, it would be better to take the initiative and stop them all. Moment. The people guarding the border collided with these foreigners. Due to the huge disparity in numbers, they actually slightly blocked the impact of the foreigners. However, this kind of obstruction only lasted for a short moment. Just in the blink of an eye. The defense was broken, and the people from the foreign land seemed to be crazy, fearless of death, and launched an attack on the closed city gate. "Block it, don't let the city be broken," the guard shouted loudly. "Once the border city is broken, countless mortals behind the border will be killed by people from foreign lands. These people from a foreign land don't care whether you resist or not." However, over time, there are fewer and fewer people standing around him, and before his eyes, the border is about to be broken. Volume 1 Chapter 522, One person controls the border. What to do? The guard was extremely anxious, but he was helpless. Facing the tide of foreign invaders, his strength alone was too small after all, just like water droplets impacting the waves. Unless he blended in, he could not make any waves at all. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womang. Chapter 587. But at this moment, through the countless exotic creatures, the guard actually saw the bright red and festive color on the horizon in the distance. What is that? Are reinforcements coming? But why are the reinforcements entangled in red robes? This kind of overly obvious decoration will definitely attract concentrated attacks from the enemy, right? The general's mind was in a state of confusion, ignoring the ideas that were bursting out of his mind. But the next moment, a bright sword light suddenly erupted. The sword energy swept across, like a natural disaster coming, and it actually rushed from the distant sky to the city wall. An abyss so deep that no one can see the bottom appeared where the sword energy passed. All the foreign creatures among them were annihilated under this sword, turned into powder, and could not be found. The appearance of this sword brought the battlefield to an instant standstill. Whether it was a foreign land or a borderland, everyone looked at the direction where the sword energy came from, stunned and speechless. Immediately, the red figure leaped forward and came directly in front of everyone, staring at these foreign creatures with cold eyes. "Whoever dares to stay will die." That's a teenager. A young man wearing a festive red robe. It's as if he just got married today. But he is such a young man. The strong power made everyone almost kneel down, not daring to look directly at him. And under this dazzling sword, not surprisingly, the foreign creatures temporarily retreated, leaving some breathing time for the border guards. On the city wall, the guard looked at Sul Yang, who was wearing a red robe next to him, hesitated for a long time, and finally couldn't help but ask, "Your clothes?" "I'm getting married today, so I came here before I could change my clothes," Sul Yang said calmly. "That's really, congratulations," the guard said, feeling something was wrong. "I can't even get married, so I have to guard the border. Should this be congratulated or not?" The guard fell into deep thought. At this moment, Sul Yang suddenly asked, "What is the situation now?" The guard was stunned for a moment, came back to his senses, and answered seriously, "The foreign land attacked without any warning, and it came with a fierce force. Our casualties were too heavy, and we couldn't resist it at all. Otherwise, we wouldn't ask you for help. Look at the people around you." Both the guards around him and the soldiers were covered in blood and exhausted. And the quantity is really too small. Apparently, they have all reached the end of their strength. What's going on in these foreign lands? Sul Yang asked curiously again. Sul Yang had naturally learned about foreign lands since he was a child. But after all, there is no way to know too much. Some things are even secret. Hundreds of tribes from foreign lands have invaded the world for a long time. Where they came from and why they came are difficult to detect. The guard sighed and spoke concisely. Just guarding the border and resisting hundreds of foreign tribes is already strenuous enough. Exploring the origins and purposes of hundreds of tribes in foreign lands. Such a thing is so difficult that it is almost impossible to succeed. Only the most elite people in the world have a chance of success, right? But those existences at the pinnacle of the world are a shock in themselves. If they are really required to go there, once they fall there, it can be said to be a very heavy blow to the world. Now, what should we do? Suliang asked again, should we repel them, or should we keep guarding them here? When he first arrived, Suliang didn't understand everything and didn't intend to take action rashly, which might lead to serious consequences. Let's guard it for now. The guard sighed, it's really difficult to repel these foreign tribes with just us. Even if you are powerful, you will never be able to gain favor when facing countless foreign tribes. Is that so? Suliang nodded thoughtfully, but then he changed the topic and said, but, I want to try. Don't mess around. The guard immediately refused, although you are strong, it is almost impossible for us alone to repel the foreign creatures. Once you are defeated in the hands of a foreign land, it will never be possible for us to defend it. It doesn't matter, I'm just giving it a try. If things don't work, I will come back. Suliang smiled faintly, then took out his sword and flew away. Even the defender had no time to stop him. Looking at Suliang's retreating figure, after a long while, the guard sighed, be on guard, be ready to respond to him at any time. Regardless of whether he is messing around or not, he is still the strongest fighter in the border area today. No matter what, we can't let him fall into the hands of a foreign land. However, waiting until daylight broke out, the guard could not wait for the surging foreign land. On the contrary, in the distance in the sky, the sword light was so bright that it shocked the mountains and rivers. Even the high mountains seemed to have been cut to the ground. Until the guard couldn't bear it anymore and planned to go and investigate. Suliang returned with his sword and fell in front of the guard. Go and rest. Foreign land shouldn't take action in a short time. Suliang said with a faint smile. What exactly did you do? The guard looked at Suliang in disbelief. To this. Suliang just shook his head and said nothing. To this end. The guard had to send a scout to investigate. But when the results of the investigation came back, the guard was completely stunned. The place that was supposed to be a foreign garrison was now in a mess, with howls all over the place. The rest are also packing their things and preparing to retreat. Suliang alone was able to repel a foreign land. One man guarded the border and massacred dozens of tribes. In his first attack, Suliang's performance shocked the world. Darkness filled the eyes and gradually receded. Suliang slowly opened his eyes and let out a sigh of relief. The scenes in the simulation appeared before his eyes one after another. One person guarding the border and massacring dozens of tribes, what a feat. Even Suliang at this moment can't do it, right? But going out on a festive day, this feeling is really a bit subtle. Look at Yuji beside you. The self in the simulation is guarding the border and is the enemy of the foreign abyss. As a lady, Yuji should also be an enemy of abyss. But why has she become the queen of the abyss now? And with such strong strength, even if facing the abyss, the chance of being knifed is not very high, right? What is it that caused the current situation? Suliang was full of curiosity about this. Volume 1 # Chapter 523 A fun-loving witch is happiest when bullying other people's husbands. But there are insufficient clues, and there is no way to deduce it. At this moment, Yuji suddenly opened her eyes and looked at Suliang with a smile. You're awake. Well, I slept well. Suliang nodded in response, but his expression was a little strange. Although it is a fleeting scene. But Yuji in the simulation, not only did not object to her husband leaving home to go off to war on his wedding day, nor did she insist on being together, but she was very supportive and understanding. Such a weak, gentle, and a little cute girl, there is really no way to connect with the queen of the abyss in front of her. But when I think about Yuji guarding the far border for so many years, she is actually protecting the present world. Suliang gradually gained some understanding. Perhaps. The truth about Yuji is far heavier than I imagined. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womeng. Chapter 588. What is hidden behind this persistence for several years? Just when Suliang was deep in thought, Yuji smiled gently. Are you hungry? How about I go make you some food? Forget it, I don't know how many people are staring at us. I don't dare to eat what they make. Suliang sat up and unconsciously showed a gentle smile to Yuji. How about I go make you some food? I remember that I brought a lot of food with me, enough for us to cope with the past 10 days. After all, I often run outside, and occasionally I encounter situations where I can't find prey or food at all. At this time, Suliang would naturally consume what he had in hand. Hearing this, Yuji was stunned for a moment, but then she smiled happily. Nodding heavily, Yuji smiled and said, "Okay, okay. Quietly put away the things you were planning to take out." Yuji took a step forward, hugged Suliang's arm and said coquettishly, "I have a lot of food I want to eat, can you make it for me?" "This depends on whether there are ingredients and seasonings. Even I can't bring all the ingredients," Suliang said helplessly. But Yuji shook her head, looking indifferent. "It doesn't matter, I have a little bit here too." "Have you prepared food too?" "Of course, like you said, who knows what's in the things they prepared for us." "I didn't expect you to be quite attentive." Suliang looked a little strange as he looked at Yuji sitting aside, happily eating the food he cooked. Yuji looked like she was not prepared for anything and didn't think of anything. But thinking about it carefully, she actually thought of everything along the way, right? In the ancient battlefield of the Abyss, Yuji taught herself the Abyss warfare method in advance so that she could hone it with the help of the trials in the ancient battlefield of the Abyss. After that, even when faced with the seemingly invincible existence in the 9th floor, Yuji always believed in herself and did not interfere too much. On the way to the Abyss Council, Yuji would have thought that someone would be blocking her, so she prepared in advance and sent all her men there. Even now, Yuji had already considered the current situation, and even prepared food. Such attentiveness and foreknowledge of the enemy's opportunities are truly unparalleled. After eating, Yuji picked up the table full of dishes and chopsticks very naturally and went aside to put them away. "Just let others take care of it. You are the queen of the Abyss. You shouldn't even have anyone to serve you." Suliang smiled and joked, but he was a little surprised in his heart. Neither the weak and gentle girl in the simulation nor the queen of the Abyss in front of her should know these things. But Yuji did it with ease, as if she had done it countless times. "Of course you have to take care of your own things," Yuji said matter-of-factly. "This way, it will feel more like life." "The feeling of life?" Suliang was speechless. I'm afraid these few words are what Yuji has always longed for, right? From a weak and gentle girl to becoming the queen of the Abyss today, others have experienced things that are simply unimaginable. Looking at Yuji's happily tidied up figure, Suliang felt a little complicated. In his mind, the image of Yuji changed a little again. This queen of the Abyss is surprisingly gentle and virtuous. A small room and a life for two of her. On the contrary, it really feels like the plain but warm feeling that a couple has after they get married. Chuckled. Suliang stepped forward and said with a smile, "I'll clean it up with you." "Okay." Yuji nodded. She had been looking forward to such a scene for a long time. And just as the two were cleaning up, Yuji suddenly took some water with her hands, and then sprinkled it on Suliang. Hey, even I don't have a lot of clothes with me. You've already wasted more than one set of clothes on me." Suliang helplessly looked at Yuji, who was getting excited. "What does it matter? It'll be dry after a little exposure." Yuji said nonchalantly, holding Suliang's hand, "Come and play with me." "Hey, I haven't been this happy for a long time. Like him now, just like a normal couple, after dinner, they clean up together and play together. For countless years, Yuji has been looking forward to and longing for it. Being with him is the most important thing. After a long time, Suliang changed his clothes and looked helplessly at Yuji beside him, who was equally wet like himself, and smiled helplessly. As the queen of the abyss, Yuji is surprisingly childish. Just like a child, no matter what it is, they can make fun of it. Such an innocent side is really rare. I'm tired, I want to sleep for a while. Yuji murmured softly, her eyes were bleary, as if she was really sleepy. But Suliang would not believe what she said. She is the queen of the abyss. A person who has reached the pinnacle of cultivation in this world. Don't say it's just for fun. Even if you have to fight with someone for several days or nights, you will not feel tired. So maybe this is tiring? However, it is different from the usual complaints after ruthlessly exposing it. At this moment, Suliang smiled and said, "Since you are tired, let's take a good rest. I will protect you from the side. As long as I am here, no matter who it is, they will never hurt you." Suliang's strength is much weaker than that of Yuji now. When he said this, he seemed to be overestimating himself. But both Yuji and Suliang understood that this was Suliang's heartfelt confession. "Okay, I believe you." Yuji smiled softly. Immediately, he came forward, leaned into Suliang's arms, and fell into a deep sleep. "Sleep peacefully." Suliang chuckled and hugged Yuji gently with his backhand. "Well, Liang." Yuji murmured softly and nuzzled into Suliang's arms, with a satisfied and happy smile on her pretty face. After a long time, in a daze, Suliang felt that there seemed to be some unknown weight on his body. "Did you fall asleep?" Suliang felt a little confused. The last memory in his mind was the scene of Yuji falling asleep in his arms. What happened next? Being alone seems a bit boring. Then, you feel sleepy for no reason? What next? Suliang couldn't resist the inexplicable sleepiness, so he set up a sword formation and fell asleep deeply. Although it was arranged in a hurry, Suliang was still very confident in his sword formation. Even if the other 8 kings come, they will never be able to bypass Suliang's warning and harm Suliang and Yuji. Not even the king who is best at hiding can do it. In this case, at least he is safe now. After feeling a little calmer, Suliang opened his eyes. Next moment, at a glance, he saw Yuji in front of him. "Good morning." Yuji looked at Suliang with a smile. "How did you sleep? Does this kind of conversation look familiar?" Suliang scratched his head and glanced at the sky outside. "What time is it now? How long have I been asleep?" "It won't be long." Yuji smiled like a successful little fox, held Suliang's face and kissed her softly. "About 2 hours." "Good guy, 2 hours is not long enough?" "Half a day has passed, okay." "Only." Suliang really couldn't remember why he fell asleep. Logically speaking, with my own cultivation strength, I had experienced another simulation before, which was considered a break. I shouldn't have felt sleepy so quickly. "I'm sorry, I couldn't help but fall asleep." Suliang smiled awkwardly and apologized. "After all, I promised to protect others, so what if I fell asleep?" "It's okay, you don't have to apologize." Yuji shook her head. "After all, I was the one who made you fall asleep." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womeng. Chapter 589. Suliang was stunned. "What do you mean?" "Literally." Yuji took it as a matter of course, I added some of those ingredients specially. Of course I prepared them myself, so I'm sure it will be fine. But you can't. Good guy, is it your problem? Then you fall asleep. Of course it's a lie. He's also very powerful. How could he get tired so easily? Sure enough, was he being teased? Suliang was speechless. Can you please give me back the warmth I had just now? Suliang was helpless. He had just trusted Yuji a little bit. Was he deceived by Yuji so easily? Can I have a little more trust? What exactly do you want to do? Suliang asked helplessly. He was a little confused when Yuji turned over and over again. I originally thought that Yuji was a very reliable and gentle queen of the abyss. But now it seems that this teasing look has not changed at all. Sleeping is so boring. Yuji giggled, come on, come and play with me. Okay, but can you please come down first? Suliang said seriously. Although there are only 2 people, there are few things to play. But don't underestimate your own knowledge reserve. If he just finds something to play with, Suliang can find a lot in minutes. Make sure the 2 of them won't be bored during these 10 days. Provided that Yuji had to come down first, otherwise, Suliang was worried that his clothes would be torn. Suliang still knew this about Yuji. Don't want. But Yuji pouted and shook her head, I want to play with you. It's time to say it. Yuji had a narrow smile on her lips and licked her lips with her fragrant tongue. She looked enchanting and charming, which really made people's hearts flutter. But at this moment, Suliang was numb. I must have heard it wrong just now, right? What Yuji said was actually like playing with herself. Okay, I didn't hear it wrong at all. Sure enough, what Yuji said about playing together was her playing with him as a toy, right? Where on earth did she come up with the idea of playing together like this? But the fact is that Suliang has no ability to resist at this moment. Let's play together, people are so boring. Yuji climbed up bit by bit, using Suliang's neck as a fulcrum, and soon she was face to face with Suliang. Looking at Suliang's helpless look, Yuji chuckled, lowered her head, and kissed her gently, with a strong but inexplicable emotion in her eyes. Oh, Aoyang looks so cute like this. I really want to eat him in one bite. What should I do? Shut up and hold it in. Suliang immediately refused. Immediately. Gritting his teeth, Suliang hugged Yuji with his backhand. Let's play together, right? With a little force, Suliang stood up and pushed directly backwards, suppressing Yuji. From a high position, he looked at Yuji's pretty face with a little confusion in front of him. Suliang snorted softly, and his whole body relaxed. Moment. Yuji felt that the warm and reassuring aura covered her entire body. The peak was proud, but it was suppressed by Suliang. It turned into a plane, but it was equally proud. The murder weapon was hidden and directly controlled Yuji's vitals, making Yuji's pretty face turn red and her eyes become hazy. To this, Suliang said there was no way, he was also a normal man, okay. Even if he had a strong willpower, he could control his actions. But he couldn't control what was a perfectly normal reaction. Come on, let's play together. With an inexplicable and weird smile, Suliang moved closer under the gaze of Yuji's slightly panicked eyes. After a long time, Suliang lay on his side on the bed, looking at Yuji beside him with a blushing face, hazy eyes, slightly open mouth, and breathing slightly, and showed a proud smile. Sure enough, this is the correct way to deal with Yuji. Do you want to play? Okay, then I'll play with you. But since we all want to play together, then I can't just let Yuji do it all the time. You still have to take the initiative you should take. Then, Suliang directly turned against the guest, and within the scope of not going too far, let Yuji experience the feelings he had before. Are you still having fun? Suliang yawned, looked at Yuji, who had not yet recovered, and asked proudly. I have to say that it took a lot of effort to suppress Yuji, whose cultivation was far beyond his. Snored. Yuji glared at Suliang. Can be followed immediately. But she had charming eyes and a charming smile on her lips. I haven't had enough fun yet, let's continue. Volume 1 Chapter 524, All-Out Attack. It's rare that he took the initiative once. Although he couldn't figure out why, of course he wouldn't let go of such an opportunity. See this. Suliang was completely speechless. Good guy, I've already used this method, but it still hasn't worked. How can I make Yuji stop? And just when Suliang was helpless, Yuji has already come up on her own. Gaofeng was tightly suppressed, and her plump and slender white legs were tied around her waist. Since you don't come, then I have to take action myself, said. Yuji kissed Suliang gently on the face. Immediately, it went all the way down and never stopped. How could Suliang let Yuji succeed? Naturally, he had to struggle hard against Yuji's actions. However, as soon as he took action, he realized that he couldn't move at all. It was difficult to even blink. Suliang was very familiar with this feeling. He was completely suppressed by Yuji. Oh ho, it's over. Seeing Yuji telling the future with her own words, Suliang closed his eyes. Until the evening, Suliang and Yuji walked in the city together. Holding Suliang's arm, Yuji had an apologetic smile on her face. Don't be angry, I know I was wrong. Really? Okay, I understand. Suliang nodded, but his expression did not change at all. Neither sad nor happy, without any emotion. It's still the same thing anyway, you know it's wrong, but you just don't change it, right? Yeah, I understand, I can't resist anyway, it's up to you. Seeing Suliang's appearance, Yuji smiled awkwardly. Of course she knew she was going a little too far, but what could be done about it? He's by his side. If he doesn't hold him down, it's already good enough to eat him completely, okay. As for the rest? How could I possibly be able to bear it? Only. Recently, he has been a little out of control and has indeed done some excessive things, which made him angry and very troubled. Otherwise, how about someone compensate you? Asked tentatively, Yuji kept observing the changes in Suliang's expression, ready to change her words at any time. My villain wants to clear his name, but he awakens Cao Thief Simulator. Author, Fangzone Womeng. Chapter 590. Yeah, okay, you have the final say. Suliang nodded expressionlessly, like a ruthless nodding machine. Compensation or something, you don't need to think about it to know, she must be treating herself as compensation for herself. You can't resist anyway, so you just have the final say. See this. Yuji pursed her lips and became depressed. Okay, I just apologize to you, from now on, I will never bother you again. As long as it makes you happy. Even if you feel a little wronged, it doesn't matter, right? Looking at Yuji, she looked a little aggrieved and pitiful. Suliang sighed. He was just worried about Yuji being too proactive. How could he really be angry with Yuji? The more they get along with her, the more he can feel Yuji's essence. The so-called Queen of the Abyss is actually just a fun-loving witch. Don't worry, I'm not angry. Suliang smiled and shook his head. From the first time he met Yuji, all the things Yuji did were beneficial to him. Even the mark left when they met for the first time made Suliang's strength improve a lot in a short period of time. Even because of that mark, Suliang obtained the holy artifact Reizo. After walking with Yuji until now, Suliang has great trust in Yuji. Although Yuji did go too far occasionally, Suliang couldn't get angry at all. Even Suliang, who had some vague guesses, felt that she was the most normal. Just like the Holy Lord's shadow in the past, from the first meeting, he showed a surprising attachment to Sul Yang, even in the almost emotionless doll posture. As for Yuji in front of me? Who wouldn't like a fun-loving witch who has many good qualities, is dedicated to your own good, and loves to play? There is no way to dislike this. And the other side. Hearing Sul Yang's words, Yuji's dim eyes immediately shone with light again. What you said is true. Are you really not angry? Of course not. Well, although what you did is indeed a bit excessive, I'm not that stingy. I won't get angry over such a trivial matter. Very good. Yuji cheered and hung directly on Sul Yang. Hey, as expected, you are the best. As expected, it was him, and he would not let himself down at all. However, let's agree first that we will never go to such extreme lengths again in the future. Do you understand? Sul Yang said quickly. He was not angry at all, but he still had to say what should be said. If it goes too far all the time, Sul Yang won't be able to bear it. His will is indeed strong, but not so strong that it will never show its flaws. I know, Yuji said with a smile. Obviously, she didn't care about Sul Yang's words. I know, but I don't seem to have agreed to change it. Just don't change it, he. How could Sul Yang not understand what Yuji meant? With a sigh, Sul Yang was completely helpless. What else can be done? Of course, you can't go back on what you promised. But I don't regret it either. Seeing the smile on Yuji's pretty face, Sul Yang couldn't help but laugh. Even if it's for this smile, even if I feel a little wronged, it's okay. I guess so. And just then, Yuji suddenly seemed to have thought of something, and said to Sul Yang, wait a minute, I have some things to deal with, and I will be back soon. Say it. Yuji left without looking back, leaving Sul Yang alone, standing there with a confused look on his face. But in the next moment, Sul Yang's brows frowned tightly. He could feel that there were several auras approaching around him. Although the opponent's strength is not very strong, the most powerful one is only at the peak of the life spring. But the number of opponents was extremely large. Compared with the interception team composed of transcendent beings that Sul Yang encountered on the road when rushing to the Abyss Council, the number of people was several times greater. But the individual strength among them is almost the same as that of that time. It was as if several of the Abyss King's men had united together to attack him. I'm afraid it was those Abyss Kings who sent their men to attack and kill him, right? Tisk, they really think highly of themselves when they send such a force here. But if you think about it carefully, it is normal. He is the one who can defeat the King of the Abyss one after another. For the King of the Abyss, whose strength is at the peak of the Abyss, no matter how cautious he is when dealing with opponents of the same level, he cannot be too cautious. Only a fight is about to begin in such a bustling city. Do those Abyss Kings not care about these people at all? There were abyssal creatures all around, and Sul Yang himself didn't care much. Volume 1 Chapter 525 You men are in danger. Since you want to play, then I will play with you. Muttering softly to himself, Sul Yang stood still, pretending to think, as if he had completely lost his vigilance. Facing Sul Yang, who was so full of flaws, how could those attackers resist taking action? Next moment, countless rays of radiance flashed through, and the surrounding spiritual energy instantly became boiling and chaotic. At this moment, various martial arts moves were fired at Sul Yang from afar, overwhelming the sky and almost covering the sky. If Sul Yang was not prepared, facing such a blow, he would probably have to panic and be seriously injured on the spot. But now, to Sul Yang, this is not a threat at all. The figure moved suddenly, leaving only an afterimage remaining in place. Just in the blink of an eye, Sul Yang rushed out of the siege of the attackers, came behind them, and slashed out with his sword. Moment. In the dazzling sword light, the sharp sword energy shot straight into the sky, tearing even the clouds in the sky into two halves. The sword energy was flowing freely, and he moved forward with the aura of no regrets. In just an instant, he cut countless attackers in half. "Who asked you to attack me?" Suliang stood in front of everyone and asked coldly. He would never show mercy to an enemy who wanted to kill him. The Emperor of the Abyss should not be held by a human being. One of them just said something coldly, and then he held the dagger behind his back and disappeared like smoke in the blink of an eye. Then, he appeared behind Suliang again and stabbed Suliang. "Since you don't tell me, there is no need for me to keep you." With a casual sword, he chopped down the man behind him. Suliang struck without mercy and used all his strength. In just a moment, all these people fell to the ground. Shaking away the blood stains on the sword, Suliang slowly sheathed the sword, looked at Yuji who was waving towards him not far away, and walked slowly over. No matter who sent these attackers, the purpose of the other party was very clear. They would not let Suliang successfully survive until 10 days later and embark on the road to becoming emperor. Suliang was not worried at all. He is very confident in his own strength, and Yuji has great trust in him. No matter who it is, no matter what tricks you have, just use them. It's just a matter of picking things up. I feel that my life has been a bit boring recently. It would be a good thing to have more adjustments. But just when he was about to come to Yuji, a ray of cold light flashed past, heading towards Suliang's throat. This is an extremely bright assassination light. Even if you know it in advance and are fully prepared, you may not be able to avoid it. Not to mention someone as unprepared as Suliang. However, facing this knife, Suliang stopped on the spot, and with a stroke of genius, he directly avoided the attacker's predicted knife. Immediately, with a backhand strike, the attacker fell to Suliang's sword. "Have you been attacked?" Yuji came to Suliang's side and looked at the mess behind Suliang. She was not surprised. "You went to deal with the assassin just now, right?" Suliang asked with a smile. Seeing Yuji nodding in confirmation, Suliang shook his head and sighed, "It seems that someone doesn't want us to calm down." Now that there was an attacker, Suliang and Yuji no longer lingered outside and went straight back to their place. However, along the way, every few steps, one or several attackers would appear and attack Suliang. Their purpose was very clear, they were just to attack Suliang, and every move was directed towards the vital point, aiming to kill him with one blow. Wait until the two of them return to the Abyss Council. After careful calculation, the two of them killed dozens of people along the way.